When asked how he felt about laying eyes on his new bride for the first time, Ryan Anderson declared, "When I first saw Gypsy, I was like, she showed up." Welcome. Grab your favorite red or white or whatever you like to drink and join us while we talk about the Gypsy Rose Prison Confession tapes.
All right, so Gypsy Rose Prison Confessions, episode 6. This is the last episode of the series, and this episode pretty much concentrated on leading up to the wedding, and then after the wedding. There were a lot of interviews with family members, a lot of interviews with Ryan, and they were, giving their thoughts back and forth. Right at the beginning of the episode, Gypsy did say that she was doing this because her mother said she would never be happy. She put a voodoo hex on her so that Gypsy would never have any happiness in her life, would never find love. So the question is she doing this because she loves Ryan and that's what she wants to do, or is she doing it to spite her mother? We don't know. But I guess that will be yet to be determined. So with all the interviews with the family, obviously they interviewed the dad, the stepmom. There was Mia, who is the stepsister, was a lot more involved in this episode. And of course, Ryan. So in the beginning, the family was not on board with this, and I don't know that they were on board with it at the end either. But they felt that she would be better off waiting. Fine, stay engaged, more power to you. But they didn't think that her coming directly out of prison and right into a marriage was necessarily the best way to go about it. But she'll do what she did. So the weird thing was, at the beginning of the episode, they were going through a lot of the conversations with Gypsy and Ryan, and Gypsy explaining that she was trying to push him away. Now, don't know if she was testing him, if this was real jitters. It was kind of hard to tell, but she was pushing him away, saying some pretty mean things, getting him all riled up. At one point, apparently she had spoken to her ex-fiance, Ken. It just boggles my mind that she has all these fiancés. She's been in prison for 10 years, but whatever. So she spoke to Ken, and that set Ryan off. Ryan was not happy about that. He was dropping F-bombs left and right, but that's what she did. And at the beginning of the episode, she said that Ken had broken up with her, that he had called off, broke up with her because he could not handle all the celebrity, all the media coverage, everything that surrounded Gypsy herself. So that was why their wedding, or whatever you want to call it, was called off, because he called it off. Then she said that she had been speaking to him after Ryan had already proposed, after they were engaged, and then she was lying to Ryan about how often she was speaking to him, when was the last time she spoke to him. So she was really putting Ryan through the ringer a little bit. And again, it's really, really difficult to figure out Gypsy's motivation in anything that she was doing. One thing I did find interesting was that Dr. Fabian, who Gypsy has been talking to. The producers had lined her up to talk. He was originally supposed to talk to her when they were preparing for her trial, but obviously she didn't go to trial, so he was let go. But the producers had gotten a hold of him to have her to talk to her before her release, before her wedding, that kind of thing. And they asked for his thoughts on them getting married. He did acknowledge that he really doesn't know much about Ryan, so he really can't speak to that part of it. But what he did say, which is what I found interesting, was that he had a grim outlook on the long-term success of this marriage, which I think probably most people do, but that's coming from a doctor who had been speaking to her quite often, and that was his thoughts on that. Now, Ryan was very concerned over this whole Ken thing and her ex-boyfriends, her ex-fiance. apparently he was jealous because, she was getting all this attention from all these other dudes. And again, she's in prison. I mean, but whatever. So she was getting, letters and love letters and photos and all this other stuff from all these men. So he was jealous. But then when she brought up Ken, he sort of lost it a little bit. So they did play some really strange phone conversations around this time between Ryan and Gypsy. They were, I don't know about he just creeps me out. There's just nothing more I could say about that. He just really does creep me out. Then with the family, when they were doing the interviews with the family, Mia was the one, and she's the stepsister. She's 10 years younger than Gypsy. But she was the one that really was pushing to meet Ryan and sort of, put him through the third degree to find out, what she could about him. She was just concerned about the whole situation. They had they showed most of the interactions between them. He was answering all of her questions, but it's really hard to tell how genuine his answers were. Were they, was he just trying to put something over on them? And you could tell that the stepmother and the stepsister were both there during this conversation, and he was answering everything correctly. He was answering what you would expect somebody to answer, but you could tell they were looking at him a little sideways, like, is this dude really for real? What is he in it for? And at one point they did mention that they're afraid when she gets out that all these leeches are going to come out to leech onto her for money. They didn't specify him, but that was the feeling I got, that they were sort of lumping him in with everybody else to see, what was he just doing this for the money? Was he in it for the money? And I guess time will tell when it comes to his motivations, but as of right now, that's where their concern was. Then he did acknowledge that he did lose his teaching job because of Gypsy. Apparently it was some sort of Christian school, and they did not like the look and the whole thing, so he did lose his job. And then he did say, and they showed this, they didn't mention the town, but they did show him driving around this small town where apparently he is teaching now. So that's what he claims anyway. But Mia did acknowledge in a separate interview after the meeting with Ryan that she still is not comfortable with them getting married, and she thinks that Gypsy needs to get out of prison and adjust. She's never been on her own. She's never really had a chance to grow up and experience all the things that normal everyday kids do, as they're growing up. So she thought it was important for her to come out and do that. Ryan was making the argument that, well, she's going to come out and then she's going to have somebody to fall back on. She's going to have somebody to be there for her. And immediately they're both like, yeah, well, that's what her family's for. So they sort of shot that idea right down. Now, one thing that Gypsy did say that I found interesting was that she acknowledged that if her father had told her, this is not a good idea, I don't think you should do it, she would have listened to him and not did it. But they showed the phone conversation of the two of them bringing up this exact subject, and the father was, no, yeah, whatever makes you happy, go for it. So here's another instance where he could have stepped in and he could have really given her some real life guidance, and he just didn't. Now, is it because he feels guilty and he doesn't want to go against anything she says? I'm going to make her happy. Whatever makes her happy makes me happy, that kind of thing, without really being a parent, without really giving good life advice. Hard to tell where his mind is on that, but he did not shut it down. He was like, yeah, if that makes you happy, go for it and be happy. So she was like, okay, that's all I need. Now, that was before that. This was, and they were showing the time frame. So this was like 12 days before the wedding, 10 days before the wedding, and then it goes into the day before the wedding. So they have Ryan and his caddy driving up to the prison, and then then they had him in his hotel room, and what I found bizarre, well, I don't know if it was bizarre, but what really made me think was, okay, at one point, just the way they angled the camera is, you could see the film crew in the background. So so they were, filming Ryan, but then there was some of the film crew. It's a small hotel room, so there's not a lot of room to move around. But they had the film crew behind him, and I thought, this man has probably been around this film crew more than he's been around Gypsy. That he's probably spent more time with these people than he's actually spent with Gypsy. And he did say in that whole hotel room shot that the wedding will be the 7th visit that he's had with Gypsy. So this will be the 7th time that he's actually been with her in person. That versus the film crew, just like, okay, really, people, is this what we're doing? It just, I don't know. But that really made an impression on me. So then the one part was, I guess he had ordered cupcakes from this bakery in town. And I'm like, of course he did.
There was a big cupcake sequence.
Yeah.
A lot of it was the countdown and the cupcakes. Countdowns and cupcakes. That's what they should have called it.
Yes. A lot about the cupcakes. What I found funny was they also said nobody could be there. So he has all these cupcakes. I'm like, all right, well, he's got a big box of cupcakes. I guess Gypsy gets one, he gets the rest. I don't know how I'm going to split it up. But they did make a big deal about the cupcakes. Which was actually pretty funny. But yeah, so apparently nobody could be there. The film crew wasn't allowed in. And, they, as we all know, they got married and apparently enjoyed a bunch of cupcakes. There was some pictures taken, but it wasn't filmed live. And there was some audio recording, which is really hard to understand what they were saying. It wasn't the greatest audio in the world. So that was the marriage. And then it sort of went into, okay, this is what it is 3 months later. And apparently they had a big blow up because once again, Gypsy was pushing the boundaries and speaking to ex-boyfriends. And I mean, it's clear that she was not prepared to be married. That she needed to go live her life before making this kind of commitment. So at that point, the stepmom was like, well, why don't you just get an annulment? We'll just, that's easy. Obviously, the marriage hasn't been consummated. It was done in prison, so I don't think there'll be a real big issue with getting the annulment. And apparently, Gypsy had wrote that to some of her friends, and I don't know who these friends are that she's writing to outside of prison. Again, she's never had friends, so where do these people come from? But, of course, she writes to them that she's thinking about getting an annulment or, we're having these issues. And, of course, one of them leaks it to the press, and there's, like, headlines all over, Gypsy's getting an annulment, that kind of thing. But, so they were doing a lot of fighting and that kind of thing, moving up, right before she was being released. And then apparently one of them, and I'm not sure which one, said, all right, we need to do something, otherwise this isn't going to work. So Ryan went and got therapists for both of them. And according to Gypsy, since they've had the therapists, there's been no more fighting. So, hopefully it's working for them. But Ryan, during this time, Ryan was freaking out, calling the stepmom. The stepmom's like, yeah, well, I warned you. This was going to happen. So he wasn't surprised.
That's a direct quote.
Yeah. Yep. So that's what this episode was about. And, it was the final episode, obviously culminating with the wedding. So what are your thoughts?
My first thought was that if Mia had been born before Gypsy instead of 10 years later, she seemed to have the most sense of anyone in that family. And I think had she been born before Gypsy, she probably would have figured it out. That was the sad part. Another thing I think is that what you were saying, the cupcakes were beautiful, and the final countdown.
They looked delicious. But...
The final countdown was just amazing. It evoked, thoughts of 80s were, rock ballads. But what I kept thinking was, she's not over the ex.
No.
And I don't want to stereotype or anything, but it's uncomfortable to watch Ryan. I mean, I feel bad for the guy. He just looks so uncomfortable. I feel like I'm watching an episode of My 600-Pound Life.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, I feel bad for the dude. And then it's so, I mean, they're in New Orleans,
Well,
right?
Louisiana, yeah.
Like near New Orleans. And the poor guy, he's just sweating and everything. He just looks uncomfortable AF. I mean, it's just really bad, you know? Yeah, and then you said something else about, and then I thought about, like, had she been a boomer, had she been a Zoomer, something would have happened, but I totally lost my train of thought. Oh my God, I'd have to go back through your notes. It's just, and once again, it's Gypsy, me, which I know it's about her, and I know they're interviewing her, but oh my word, me. I can't even take it anymore, you know what I mean? And the physical differences between the two dudes was like really.
Oh, it was night and day.
It was glaring. He was tall. He was like
very tall. He
was built. Yeah. So I mean, she does seem to really love Ryan. I mean, they do seem to have a good connection. But when she kept talking about this dude, I was like, that's the one that got away. She's not over this guy.
Yeah, and Ryan did say he's afraid he's second fiddle or he's the runner up or the booby prize.
And I said that while we were watching it. I said Ryan is what was behind door number 2.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So obviously she kept saying she picked Ryan. In the beginning she said she picked Ryan because he was from Louisiana. But now we find out that she did not pick Ryan.
Well, and it just goes along with the narrative. Gypsy, what's true and what's not true.
What's right, exactly. And now I come to find out, I did some research today, she her Instagram is set to private and so is her TikTok. And I guess she's getting off Instagram. I'm waiting for OnlyFriends to be next. You know, OnlyFriends, where people pay to view your spicy content.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm thinking that might be her next social media outlet because I
hope her next move is doing the right thing and just advocating for victims, getting the word out there, talking about the problems out there, and just going that route. But I'm afraid you might be right.
I'm thinking OnlyFriends might be her next move.
Yeah.
I have a feeling because I mean, obviously, I think America is kind of getting disillusioned with her. If she's setting Instagram to, Instagram and now TikTok, I think you have to follow her to view her. No, you could actually see her stuff on content on TikTok. That's right. But on TikTok, it said that she was setting Instagram to private and she was going to do everything through TikTok. So and to follow her on TikTok was private. Not that I did because I'm not going to, but. So I don't know what's going on with that. That might be a new, maybe that's because of the pregnancy. She's trying to stay on, if she is pregnant. We haven't heard anything about that again.
No, for sure.
Maybe she's just trying to stay under the radar. I don't know. So I think this saga will continue to play out.
Well, hopefully it quiets down. Hopefully she can just. I mean, I'm not rooting against them. I'm not rooting for them. I could really care less one way or the other. But hopefully they give it a shot and try to do it outside of the public eye where they can actually build a real relationship. Because I'm sorry, the 7th in-person visit, you're getting married, that's not a real relationship.
But here's the problem. She does not know how to do life outside of prison. Or outside of being controlled by her mother.
No, not at all.
So I don't.
Which is what the parent, the stepmom and the sister were.
Right, the dad, yeah.
The dad was like, whatever makes you happy.
I think he's just the most chill dude ever. Like the dude is almost in a coma, isn't he? He's so freaking chill.
He must be in a coma because, and I notice things and I look at things and it drives her nuts sometimes.
You're
the stuff that I concentrate on. But even in this episode, they were showing old photos. And I think I mentioned it in the last video. There was that photo of her up in a tree where she probably looked like she was maybe 5 or 6 years old.
Right.
In that age range. But then, in this episode, they showed another picture of her where I mean, it might have been the same age, but it actually looked a little bit younger. She was in a wheelchair. How do you go from a wheelchair to climbing a tree back to a wheelchair and not question what the hell's going on.
Well, even better. How about the picture of her holding the baby? Holding her sister. I mean, her sister was a giant baby. She was a big freaking baby.
Well, then that means she was at least 10 years old.
But, exactly, and it looked like, she was a big baby.
Yeah.
It looked like she was standing up to hold this big giant baby. The baby looked like she weighed at least 20, 30 pounds.
Yeah.
That was a big baby, right?
A big baby.
Yeah. So, like, that was a little bizarre to me, too. Like, that picture, just the juxtaposition of her standing holding that big baby, not being able to, like, walk was just weird,
I just can't figure the dad out. I just don't know, was he just doing the best he could, or was he putting his head in the sand? Was he just totally bamboozled and manipulated by Dee Dee?
Here's another thing we never thought of. Was he in on it? Were they profiting? Did Dee Dee say, be in on this with me? And well, they had, for him just being a longshoreman a couple months a year, they seemed to have a very nice house. And that boat they had was beautiful.
I was thinking the same thing.
You were thinking that too?
Yeah.
It looked like a lot of wealth. But I mean, I guess if you have a good catch, right?
I think he gets paid pretty well.
I guess if you have a really good catch, too.
I don't know exactly what he does. I don't know if he gets paid by the...
Yeah, that's true. Maybe he just runs the ship. I don't know.
I don't know if he's salary or commission, you know.
But yeah, you never know. Like, maybe they were complicit in it. I don't know. Who knows?
But I do know, when I was... a long time ago when I was watching that crab show from Alaska, Deadliest Catch.
Yeah.
Those guys made a ton of money for the little bit of time they were out there.
Yeah. But I mean,
they made
that's true.
Boatload of money.
Right. So yeah, I mean, sometimes all you need is those couple months and those couple catches. Yeah, I don't.
I mean, they'd be out for a couple months. They make $50,000. So. I don't know, and I think he works.
I mean, maybe he's just the person who knows what he knows, and fishing's his thing. Maybe he's like a Bubba Gump. Shrimp fishing, shrimp boats, and you're like, I don't know, but they totally could have been complicit in it. But the stepmother seems like the most genuine person of them all, and the sister seems like the only one that has a brain of the whole outfit. Well, the stepmother too. Because the stepmother gave her good advice. Like the stepmother
does keep giving her good advice, and the stepmother's the one. And I said to you, and back during Katrina, the stepmother was the one that was trying to find them, her and Dee Dee, find out what happened to them. So the stepmother has sort of been leading the charge all along, but maybe she has.
Something about Ryan really rubs me the wrong way too. He seems like disingenuous, maybe. I don't want to say quite fake. And then another thing too. He seems to be like that very soft Southern. I think of that song Black Velvet by Alana Miles, like that soft Southern style, like Elvis kind of. But then, you hear him on the phone with her when he's pissed off. But obviously, we all are a different person. I mean, don't piss me off. Like I'm older.
No.
Yeah.
And when we were watching it, I paused it. I'm like, what do you think of his tone there? Because it sort of took me off guard with the way he was, because you could hear it. They actually had the recording, so you could not only see the words, but you could hear the tone. And it sort of took me back a little bit.
Well, and I told you, it was 12 days from it was a few days before the wedding. He can't see her. He's only talking to her on the phone. So, of course, you're going to you know what I mean? It's not that kind of situation where you could just talk to her and figure it out, So, and he doesn't know what she's pretty much day to day except for when she calls him. So there's a real loss of control there. Yeah. I don't. And then you got to think about somebody who's just like, okay, well, you're writing to Joe Exotic, I'll write to Gypsy Rose, I always had a crush on her. Like, you know what I mean? Like, do we ever sit around and I'm like, oh, I'm going to write to, to Chris Watts, and you're like, oh, I'm going to write to Taylor Shabusiness. You know what I mean? Like, we're not going to do that kind of stuff,
I'd write to Phoebe Cates.
You write to Phoebe Cates, right? Well, you probably have a much better time with Taylor Shabusiness. That girl was a freak. But anyway, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yes.
Yeah, so who just does that, I mean, I'm fascinated by the Watts case. I'm not going to write to Chris Watts, you know what I'm saying? So... yeah, I don't know. And I mean, there definitely is a psychological profile of somebody who, wants to date people in prison because it's safe. I mean, obviously, given his weight, he probably doesn't have a lot of options. I hate to say that, but, dating's competitive nowadays, especially if you're younger, so it's just, I don't know. We're going to just...
But he's her Prince Charming.
Yes, okay then. Yeah, the poor girl was in all those beautiful princess dresses thinking she's going to be a princess and that's your prince. But whatever. Okay, so, I mean, and I'm not going to hate, if he loves himself in that way, body positivity,
and if that's what she likes,
if she finds him attractive, you go, girl. The big people need love too. I mean, obviously neither one of us is.
There was a stark difference.
This big, yeah.
But there was a stark difference between her first fiance
Right.
which still just drives me nuts.
And he looks so much like her mother.
Yeah.
Oh my God, when they show the pictures of him like next, I'm like, I think we're gonna watch these two crazy kids implode, and it's gonna play out in the media, and we're gonna get to watch
absolutely, yeah. It definitely will. But I really do hope that she does just go off into the sunset
and put off
just,
having children. Those two are not.
Oh, I
ready
forgot to
raise
mention
children.
that. Yeah, she thinks she will be the best mom in the world because she knows what not to do. Okay, that's a good reason to have a kid, because you know what not to do. Yeah, is just.
And then what do you tell your kids? Like, oh yeah, Dad decided he'd write to me in prison because I killed, your grandma. Like, it's like How I Met Your Mother, but it's a weird version of it.
Yes, yeah.
But to each his own, and if they're truly in love, I'm all about love. Go for it. But I don't know. I feel like it's like we're watching a bad accident.
Yeah, it really does.
The train's
but
on the track.
It'll be interesting to see what happens here the next. I don't think it's going to last much longer, but it'll be interesting to see what happens as the year plays out.
Yeah.
They've only been, she's only been out since December 23rd, right?
Right. Yeah. It was right before Christmas, right?
It's not even been 3 whole months yet. So.
And now it's been 3 whole months, and now things are getting set to private, and this is getting moved around.
Yeah, exactly. So something's happening in the background. And by the way, make sure you check out the playlist on the Gypsy. We have a lot of content on Gypsy. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you check out the playlist. There's a lot. Like I said, this is the last Prison Confessions, but we have done other videos on Gypsy Rose as well. So definitely check that out.
And you can thank us because you don't have to watch it.
Yes.
Because it was it was long and painful.
It was kind of tedious, yeah.
Yeah, so.
It was really tedious.
But now the wine?
The wine, definitely the wine.
The good stuff, the wine.
So what we are drinking today is a dry Riesling from Hazlitt Vineyards. And this is one of your favorite places up there, isn't it?
It's fun. It's a fun
wine,
place.
I mean, this is probably the best wine I've tasted out of there.
Yeah, they do a lot of sweets.
They're very sweet.
They're very famous for their red cat, white cat. They have cabin fever, which is like a blush, and then if you want to mix the cabin fever with the red cat, you make cat scratch fever. And then, like, I've been there before, and they have you yell, red cat, it's an aphrodisiac, red cat, it'll get her in the sack, which is a lot of fun to yell after you've, had done about 20 wine tastings.
Exactly.
And they serve lots of popcorn. They serve, like, the movie theater
the
popcorn.
popcorn's good, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a lot more fun to yell at after you've done a bunch of wine tastings than just yelling out in the middle.
But yeah, most of their wines are very sweet. This is a very good dry Riesling.
It's a very good dry Riesling, yeah.
We found this on our hunt for the best Riesling in the Finger Lakes.
To me, the mark of a good Riesling, it just has the right amount of like a lemony flavor.
Exactly.
And this has like a nice little bit of a lemony flavor.
And
like it's not too citrusy, but it's just like a hint, but it's a good, and it always has like a juicy, fruity, I don't normally get this crazy about wine and like do this. It's kind of like, it's good, it sucks when I try it.
Exactly,
But
it's better, it tastes like soap, that's the way I am.
It's got like a fruity juiciness about it that's nice too. So
it's nice and dry.
Right, if you like dry but yet fruity and juicy and a little hint of lemon, we highly recommend. Now I sound like I'm working for. Hey Hazlitt, if you're watching, I would love to come to your winery and endorse your products and yell that it'll get her in the sack and stuff like that. So hit us up, Hazlitt. We're waiting on you.
Absolutely.
So this has been another edition of True Crime and Wine Couple. Stay tuned. We've got a lot more coming for you, and if you like, and if you want to subscribe, subscribe, and stay tuned for more. Probably not as amusing as this content because we're true crime and wine, but yes, exactly. Stay tuned. There's more to come.
Too, because he's never there.